כי ניצח אדוני, כי לקחה מיד השם, כפליים בכל חטאותיך. נחמו נחמו עמי, נחמו נחמו יום אלוקיכם, נחמו נחמו עמי, נחמו נחמו יום אלוקיכם. דברו אל ירושלים וקראו אליה, כי מלך צבאה, כי ניצח אדוני, כי לקחה מיד השם, כפליים בכל חטאותיך. נחמו נחמו
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Mann, and I'm honored to be the chairperson of this year's Yom HaShoah commemoration. As the witnesses to the Holocaust grow older, they rightfully ask the profoundly difficult yet enormously important question, who will tell our stories? This is the theme of this year's commemoration, and it is a question we hope to give partial answer to this afternoon with the words of our featured speakers, survivor Janet Singer Applefield and her daughter Deb Miley. Perhaps never before in post-Holocaust history of this country and indeed the world has this question taken on more significance. A mere 80 years from the horrific night of broken glass, Kristallnacht. Only 75 years from the liberation of the death camps, while the nearly universal mantras of never forget and never again still resonate in our collective ears. We face what many believe to be a rising tide of anti-Semitism. It has manifested itself most recently in the tragic shooting at a San Diego synagogue, an appalling act that mirrored the shooting just 6 months earlier at the Pittsburgh Tree of Life Synagogue that claimed the lives of 11 congregants. All this amidst a report of the doubling of the number of assaults against American Jews from 2017 to 2018. And the situation in Europe is even worse. Consider that last week the Times International published a political cartoon portraying the Prime Minister of Israel as a dog. In an extraordinary editorial, the New York Times quickly apologized and denounced the cartoon as a result of a single production editor who, and I quote, failed to recognize its anti-Semitism. And the Times rightly, but ominously observed that this incident was evidence of a profound danger, not only of anti-Semitism, but of the numbness of the creep into public view and common conversation of anti-Semitism. The numbness. Has the world forgotten already? And what of American Jews themselves? Only a month ago, Jewish participants in a political convention in Las Vegas could be heard clapping and cheering with approval in the response to the declaration by the featured speaker that this country, the country of salvation for many in that very room, is too full to accept any more refugees. Have we forgotten already? While the responsibility and the privilege of telling the stories of the survivors will rest primarily on the shoulders of their descendants, they are not alone. As evidenced by the hundreds of contributors to the Israel Arbeiter Essay contest this year and the poignant expressions of this year's contest winners, there is hope and promise that future generations will understand the significance of these stories and the historical realities they represent. The survivors' stories become our stories, and so it goes from generation to generation. In light of the disturbing realities we face today, it is more important than ever for each and every one of us to answer the survivors' questions of who will tell our stories with a resounding response, we will tell your stories. For it is only by so doing that we ensure that the true lesson of the Holocaust is passed on, that we must all have the moral courage to speak out against injustice in the world and to confront bigotry and hatred wherever it is found. We need only look to the survivors themselves to see what that courage looks like. Let us all commit ourselves to telling those stories of the survivors to our families, to our friends, and to all who we confront, so that never forget and never again will be more than just words. We gather today to remember and honor the lives lost in the madness that was the Holocaust, and to pay tribute to the resilience, the courage, and the perseverance of the survivors who are still among us. They are all heroes. Will those survivors joining us today who are able to do so please rise and be recognized? Joining us today are Chan Rogers, Al Rosen, and Isidore Cutler, brave and compassionate men who, with their brothers in arms, helped to liberate the death camps. Would you please rise and be recognized? We are honored to be joined this afternoon by the Consul General of Israel to New England, Ambassadors Ed Boker, Consul General of the Federal Republic of Germany to New England, Nicole Menzenbach, Deputy Consul General of Israel to New England, Daniel Agranov, Rabbi Mark Baker, the President and the CEO of the Combined Jewish Philanthropies. A special thank you to Shir Rhythm and Rabbi Moshe Waldox for providing musical accompaniment during today's program. It is particularly wonderful to have with us today members of our interfaith clergy group. Those partners include Mr. Yusufi Valley, Reverend Zanetta Armstrong, Reverend Steve Watson, Reverend Barbara Groover, and Reverend Nancy Taylor, who will join together to represent one community during our candlelight ceremony. Thank you so much for being here. A special welcome to Michael Ross, the former president of the Boston City Council, who is here today with his father, Stephen Ross, the founder of the New England Holocaust Memorial. Thank you for being here. We welcome our many guests from Methuen and the Fitchburg communities, especially the students who have played such a special role in today's program in particular. And we are privileged that Mary Beth Donovan, the principal of the Tenney Grammar School in Methuen and the recipient of the Leadership in Holocaust Education Award, is with us, along with Linda Snow Doxer, of the Reading School Committee. Thank you for being here. Bringing this important commemoration to the community is only possible through the cooperation of partnership organizations who are listed in your program. The greater Jewish community and its volunteers are also the backbone of this event. Of special note is the tremendous collaboration of the area schools and the dedication and commitment of the Yom HaShoah Committee for the planning of this event. And I would be remiss if I did not extend a special note of thanks to Emily Reichman of the JCRC and Ellen Kay for their inexhaustible energy and their commitment to this event. The community is deeply indebted to both of you. And now it is my pleasure to welcome back Shir Rhythm to lead us in the Star Spangled Banner and Hartikva. Would you all please rise?
Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. A candle of the Lord is the human soul. From these words in the book of Proverbs, we take the custom of lighting a candle on the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the death of loved ones. Of those who survived the Holocaust, most lost someone, some lost many, and others, like my father, lost everyone. No one that he knew before the war was alive after the war. His entire family had been killed. Every child he went to school with, every person he had ever known before the war were all gone. Each of the 6 million who perished meant the world to someone. But none of them were ever properly laid to rest in a cemetery with a gravestone where loved ones could visit. And most left with no one to remember them, no one to mourn for them, no one to recite Kaddish for them or light a Yortzeit candle in tribute to them. We gather here today to honor those, many that we had never even met, many that we don't know, but who deserve to be remembered. We invite clergy to each light a candle in tribute to the 6 million who were killed. The Reverend Zanetta Armstrong from the Church of the Holy Spirit. The Reverend Barbara Groover from Charles Street, AMA. Reverend Nancy Taylor from the Old South Church. Yusuf Vali from the Islamic Center Society of Boston Cultural Center. Reverend Steve Watson from the Reservoir Church. And we ask Janet Applefield, our survivor speaker today, to light the 6th candle. From those 6 million that perished, we need to remember that 1.5 million were children. Together with these community leaders, we remember the 6 million. Today is also a day for us to remember people who survived the Holocaust, but are now no longer with us. We remember David Dembling, and we invite his children and members of his family to come and each light a candle. With a tremendous sense of personal loss, we recall the contributions that David made to our community. From this podium, David beautifully sung the Hymn of the Partisans many times. At the New England Holocaust Memorial Site, at Brandeis Yitzker programs, at Cafe Europa events, and at countless other occasions, we were honored to hear him sing Yiddish songs and lullabies. In my heart, I hope that I will forever hear his voice. I am grateful that I had the privilege to know him and to say he was a very special part of my life and a very special part of our community. Just this morning, the German Consul honored Izzy Arbeiter on the occasion of his 94th birthday. But I will share with you that it was David Dembling who met Izzy and his wife and their brand new baby daughter when they arrived in this country, and it was David Dembling who escorted them to their new home here. May his family find comfort in knowing how much we cherished their father in our community. And together with you, we remember David Dembling. We remember Gerald Levin, survivor, and we ask his family to each light a candle in his memory. His wife, Joyce Levin, survivor, his sons, Sidney and Stephen and Mark, second-generation survivors. Standing here today, looking out at all of you, I can still see Jerry sitting with you. He had a remarkable way of making people smile. He knew what to say and really could deliver a punchline, even when he was just talking. He would have been a terrific stand-up comic. He was a natural and could always make me laugh. Long before American students played soccer here, survivors started their own team. Jerry and other members of this community, including my father, were on the same soccer team. We remember Jerry Levin. We invite Lori Whitmore, second-generation survivor, to light a candle in memory of her father, Peter Whitmore, the name he had in this country, and Pinchas Weichman, the name he was given at birth. Peter was not only a survivor of the Holocaust, but he was also a veteran of the United States Army. Survivors were forever grateful for the armies that liberate them. And today of all days, May 5th, was the day that my father was liberated by American soldiers from the concentration camp he was in. And Peter, like my father, must have felt the only way to thank them was to become a soldier and to help others. Peter was very active in his community and was to be the recipient of the Man of the Year Award from the Federation of Men's Clubs. Unfortunately, he passed away before receiving this remarkable achievement. But I am sure to his family and those who knew him, he did not need to receive this recognition because he was their Man of the Year each and every year. We remember Seema Laffer, and we ask her daughter, Devora, second-generation survivor, to light a candle in her memory. I have known Seema since I was a young child. She was the aunt of a classmate. With each death of a survivor, we lose so much. We lose the eyewitnesses to our history. We lose our direct connection to our European Jewish heritage, to the lifestyles and customs that our families knew in Europe. And we also lose something that is very dear to those of us who were born in this country who knew Jewish people from Europe. We lose the sound of their accents. English spoken by European Jews with a Yiddish accent. We lose hearing Yiddish spoken as a first language, our Mama Loshen. We lose the sound of the comfort of those voices, and we lose what it sounded like to us as their children. I remember the first time I heard Seema speak. It was her accent and the way she put words together that touched me. I felt as though I had always known her. Seema was a matriarch of her family and of our community. Many of us here can still envision her walking down Beacon Street and around Coolidge Corner, always very well made up, always very well dressed, always wearing a hat, and always stopping to talk to someone. She was an observant Jew, but also an observant person. She knew everything that was going on and was instrumental in getting things done for others. She was a presence in our life for decades. She was a real Yiddish mama, and together with Devora, we remember Seema Laffer. We remember Jaime Hipsman, survivor, and invite members of his family to each light a candle in his memory. His sons, Farley, Erwin, and Michael, second-generation survivors, 2 grandchildren, Scott and Josh, third-generation survivors, and Ethan, a fourth-generation survivor. We miss his wife Ella here today and send our condolences for her loss. Jaime and Ella were a team. Together, they attended Holocaust Remembrance programs and events and built a new life in this country. In 2013, members of this community went as a group to attend the 20th anniversary of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Jaime and Ella were planning on coming, but one of them was not feeling strong enough. So neither one of them went, because one wouldn't leave without the other. One grandchild of theirs was scheduled to come with us. Jaime called me to tell me that he would not be able to come, but asked that we take his grandson. Of course we did. The trip was a tremendous success for many reasons. Those of us coming from Boston represented the largest group of Holocaust survivors and their families who came together from one association to attend the 20th anniversary of the Memorial Museum. The grandson that Jaime asked me to take with us met his future wife on that trip, also the grandchild of survivors. I can only imagine the joy Jaime felt when just a few years later, a great-grandchild was brought into Jaime's family. We remember Jaime Hipsman. We remember Anna Garut, survivor, and honor her daughter, Cantor Rosalie Garut, second-generation survivor, with the lighting of the next candle. Anna survived Auschwitz along with one sister. Her parents and 6 other siblings all perished. Anna lived to be over 100 years old, but when interviewed, confirmed what we already know, that each day is Holocaust Remembrance Day for survivors. She said that even after all these years, that every holiday, every family occasion, and every day in between, that she still missed her family. She missed her siblings as the children they were when she knew them, and she missed them as the grown-ups that they never had a chance to become. We remember Rita Kesselman, survivor, and we ask her son, second generation if he is here, and his wife Leslie, to light candles in her memory. And here they come. Rita, together with her husband, Morris Kesselman, survivor, were pillars of our community. Morris, for many years, held the post that I now hold as president of the Survivors Association. When he was president, the association was called the New Americans. Rita was not just the wife of the president or a member, but someone who took pride in being a new American. She helped me and others in so many ways. I knew that when she called, I needed to pay extra careful attention. After Morris passed away, Rita called and said that the statue of Job at Brandeis looked a little worn out, and that we should raise funds to have it refurbished. She provided us with the original invoice from 30 years earlier and started the fundraising by writing out the first check. As a result of her efforts, the statue outside the chapel has been brought back to its original condition and stands as a reminder that there were survivors of the Holocaust here who brought ashes from Auschwitz and buried them on the grounds of Brandeis to enable survivors and future generations to stand there as if they stood at the graves of those who perished in the Holocaust. Even in recent years, she relocated to Orchard Cove, but still took charge of the survivors there and the spouses of survivors and informed them about the events and helped coordinate transportation. She would call me with a list of people who were coming and would make sure they were all on the bus. Rita had a sense of responsibility to make a difference. We remember Rita Kesselman. A flickering candle reminds us of a flame of a life that once burned brightly and illuminated the lives of loved ones. May we continue to gather as a community to pay homage to those who perished and to honor survivors in our community. May the 6 million rest in peace, knowing that there were survivors and that we are here to remember them, and that we will not allow their lives to ever be forgotten. Thank you.
I will tell your story by raising my voice against hate, because hate has no place in this world.
I will tell your story by being an upstander.
I will tell your story telling others it's not forgotten.
I will tell your story by maintaining a strong connection to my Jewish heritage and having zero tolerance for all forms of discrimination.
I will tell your story by sharing the richness and traditions of Jewish life with my son, by teaching him the Jewish values that have endured for generations, and by instilling in him the importance of never forgetting the Shoah.
I will tell your story by standing up to hate, because hatred has no place in this world.
Good afternoon. When we consider those who we have lost this past year, we are reminded of the heightened sense of urgency to share the stories of the survivors, and in particular, to educate young people about the Holocaust and its lessons. And when we consider this past year, the events in Pittsburgh, in Poway, events around the country and around the world, and the report this last week that the Anti-Defamation League in an audit had found that Massachusetts had the 4th highest number of anti-Semitic incidents in the entire country, ahead of far larger states like Texas and Florida, then we know that these times are challenging and that there is work to do. But when we reflect on these, we also know that there is something different from 1933 or 1937 to 2019. And one of those things that is different is that we do not stand against hate and anti-Semitism alone. We have upstanders, we have partners, we have the clergy who have stood with us and who we have stood with them as their own communities have faced tragedy and hatred this year. And we have the support and partnership of our local elected officials who have been with us every step of the way. We are very honored today to have Mayor Marty Walsh of Boston with us again. He has been steadfast in his commitment to standing up against anti-Semitism and hatred. I hate to say it to him, but we have seen each other all too often in recent years for the wrong reasons because of events, but for the right reason, because he has been with us in moments of crisis, when the New England Holocaust Memorial was vandalized, after the massacre in Pittsburgh, and in times of remembrance like today. We are grateful for his presence always. Mayor Marty Walsh.
Thank you, Jeremy, and I want to thank you, Rick, and to all the people and organizations gathered here this morning. Thank you for being here today, this afternoon. To the faith leaders, to the consuls and dignitaries that are on the stage and the audience, to the veterans, especially to the survivors and their families, to somebody who just walked in off the street to be here today. Thank you very much. The entire Jewish community of Greater Boston and anyone who's visiting here today, welcome. In this time of remembrance, our city stands with you. We stand with you as unwavering allies in this vital work. The work of remembering the Holocaust, of honoring those who lost and those harmed by it, and the work of naming and rejecting the evil ideas brought into being, and unfortunately, as Jeremy mentioned, are still with us today. This is our duty to you, members of our beloved community, to make our acts of remembrance resolutions of solidarity. We think of, and it was mentioned 3 times today, and I think we should mention it as much as possible so we don't forget. Overland Park, Kansas, Pittsburgh, San Diego. We feel your grief, we share your concerns. We are listening when you point out the warning signs, and we will never assume our own community is immune. And we say never again, and we say not now and not here. I've pledged before, and I'm going to pledge again as Mayor of Boston, I will take every step possible to prevent the spread of hatred. That means ensuring safety and security, and it means so much more than that. It means teaching history, the causes, and the ongoing realities of anti-Semitism. It means proclaiming continually and without reservation our values of respect, of love, of compassion. So today, we not only stand in support, but also in gratitude. We are grateful for the example of resilience and courage, for your message of vigilance and love, for the wisdom you have built over generations and shared with all of us as members of our community. It's wisdom we need now more than ever, and it's a message that we take into our hearts. Thank you once again for holding this profound, important commemoration in our city, in Boston. Of those who remember today, you have truly made their memories a blessing, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're honored to be joined today by Ambassadors Ze'ev Boker, Consul General of Israel to New England, and Nicole Menzenbach, Consul General of the Federal Republic of Germany to New England, both of whom will offer remarks. Ze'ev Boker has been Consul General of Israel to New England since October 2018. His diplomatic career spans 3 decades, in which he has served as the 6th Israeli ambassador to Ireland and as the 1st ambassador of Israel to Slovakia. Ambassador Boker has also served as a deputy diplomat advisor to the late Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin. Ambassador, we're pleased to have you here today to address us. Premature. Nicole Menzenbach is the Consul General of Germany to New England. From 2014 to 2017, she served as the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Berlin as the head of the Division for Higher Education, Science, Academic Relations Policy. And from 2012 to 2014, as a senior advisor for the Afghanistan Multilateral Affairs on the Afghanistan-Pakistan Task Force. Her various roles within the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs have found her stationed in Lisbon, Portugal, New Delhi, India, and now the shock of the winters of Boston, Massachusetts. We apologize. First, we'll hear from Ambassador Zev Boker, who will offer remarks, followed by Consul General Nicole Menzenbach. Please join me in welcoming them. Thank you.
Holocaust survivors, Mayor Walsh, Consul General Menzenbach, Rab Baker, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Mann, honored guests. I stand before you today as a representative of the State of Israel and the son of parents who as young people escaped Poland just before death camps of the Nazi regime brought calamity to the world and Shoah onto the Jewish people. My parents sought refuge in pre-state Israel and set about rebuilding their lives there. Sadly, most of their families who remained in Poland perished. My parents' surname, Boker, is not my original family name. My father's family name was Blizhowski, derived from the name of the town in what was then Poland. The town was mostly populated by Jews, most of whom were murdered during the Holocaust. As my parents began to rebuild their shattered lives and fight for independent state of Israel in their ancient homeland, the last remains of European Jewry emerged from the death camps, from the forest and from the evil grip of the Nazi regime to try and rekindle their spark of life. My father made a decision to dedicate himself to bringing these survivors to our homeland and went on to work as envoy of Mossad L'Aliyah Bet, the organization of clandestine immigration. He had the opportunity to have a personal relationship with two of the leaders of Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Ante Zuckerman and Sivia Luvetkin. Their granddaughter, Ronnie Zuckerman, became the Israeli first female fighter pilot. In the years before my father's passing, he spent his time working in ghetto fighters' house in the Kibbutz Lochmei Getaot museum, founded by the ghetto fighters and dedicated to the documentation and study of the Jewish resistance during the Holocaust. In fact, the official remembrance of the Shoah in Israel takes place on the 27th days of Hebrew month of Nisan, that marks the anniversary of Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The official name in Israel is Yom HaShoah ve'Gvura, which means Holocaust and Heroism Remembrance Day, which acknowledged not only the catastrophe that was inflicted on our people, but also their heroism. It indeed no coincidence that the celebration of the Israeli Independence Days occurs only 8 days after the remembrance of this very dark period. In their darkest hour, the survivors of Shoah found light in the fledgling Jewish state. They worked with all their might to build the state of Israel, to grow something from the ashes, to build protection and regain their independence. When I served as Deputy Chief of Mission in the Israeli Embassy in Czechoslovakia, it was my great honor to host Israeli poet and filmmaker Chaim Guri. In his award-winning documentary about the Shoah, The 81st Blow, Guri described the fate of a young child who had been beaten 80 times by SS officer in the ghetto and who survived or finally able to immigrate to Israel. Sadly, the stories of those young survivors told right after the war, as all the accounts told by other survivors, were not fully believed by Israelis or the rest of the world, for that matter. Guri called the failure of the other to believe the stories of those survivors the 81st blow. It was a trial of Nazi perpetrator Adolf Eichmann in the 1960s, which opened up the eyes of the Israeli and the entire world to the true scope of the Shoah for the first time. At that trial, one of the witnesses told the story of those young boy whose story has not been believed. Indeed, it was the story of Mickey Goldman, the chief investigative officer to the prosecution, who was present in the courtroom during this testimony. Goldman described the experience of the interviewed fellow survivors who said witness as follows: "We saw the suffering of that each of the witness was going through, both during the process of collecting the information and testimony and later when they appeared in court. It was a sacrifice for each of them, but it was necessary. We needed to bring living witness to serve as a vital part of what occurred during the Holocaust. I cannot emphasize enough the power of eyewitness accounts of Holocaust survivors to keep alive the stories of Jewish survival and heroism, as well as the story of those brave non-Jewish men and women who will call the righteous among the nations, who risk their life to serve their Jewish neighbors. The story of Mickey Goldman captures the struggle of the Jewish people endured in the 20th century, arising from the death or destruction and death to the rebirth of hope embodied in the State of Israel. The foundation of the State of Israel were built with the historical lessons of the Shoah in mind. That is, another Holocaust will never be allowed to happen again. Had Israel existed as an independent state at the time of the Shoah, it could have maybe prevented the extermination of many of our Jewish brothers. Also today, we continue to struggle for our existence, and the latest terrorist attacks in the south of Israel prove the importance of strong State of Israel and the togetherness with the Jewish people. On this Yom HaShoah, we should all remember the importance of keeping the memory of the 6 million Jews alive and fighting anti-Semitism in all its forms. The deadly attacks on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh 6 months ago and the last week attack on the worshippers in Chabad Broadway during the Passover His core service show us that anti-Semitism are still with us, but they will never prevail. The Jewish people is strong, and the State of People remains committed to ensure that never again truly means never again. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank the Jewish Community Relation Councils for inviting me to deliver the remarks on this very important day. I'm so honored and moved to be standing here in solidarity with all of you and among the brave Holocaust survivors and their families. Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, serves as the day for the world to reunite in remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust, to honor the survivors and their families, and to reinforce our commitment to ensuring that the horrors of the past are never forgotten and never repeated. This is a very painful but important day. It forces us to confront the darkest chapter of German history. Each year on this day, we hear survivors share their powerful stories of suffering and perseverance. Today, we will be hearing the testimony of Janet Applefield and her daughter Deb. We share in their pain and pass on their testimonies to future generations. It is in our responsibility to commit ourselves to remembering that never again truly means never again. The German Consulate is fully committed to continuing the work of educating the next generation and ensuring that those who died are not forgotten. We are a proud sponsor of programs like the Israel Arbeiter Holocaust Essay contest, which raises Holocaust awareness, deepens understanding of the Holocaust, and encourages youth to act against discrimination and defend democratic values in their communities. In times where anti-Semitism is increasing, it is critical that we stand united and fight against it and other forms of hatred. I feel very fortunate that the Jewish community and the Holocaust survivors in Boston area have been so willing and open to work together with the German consulate on our shared goals. In my short time here, I have already developed deep relationships with the Jewish community that I hold very dear and will continue to cherish. We cannot change the past, but we can take its lessons to ensure a better future. With that, let us dedicate ourselves today to cultivating a world in which we always choose tolerance and compassion over discrimination and violence. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Consul General Beaucaire. Thank you very much, Consul General Menzenbach. It is now my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Mark Baker, the President and CEO of the Combined Jewish Philanthropies of Greater Boston, to share his greeting. This is Rabbi Baker's first Yom HaShoah commemoration since assuming the position of President and CEO of CJP in July of 2018. But Rabbi Baker has spent most of his professional life serving the Greater Boston Jewish community. An organizational leader and educator, he served for 11 years as the head at Gann Academy, Greater Boston's pluralistic Jewish high school, prior to joining CJP. Rabbi Baker regularly speaks, writes, and teaches about Judaism, the Jewish community, and leadership. And we are delighted to welcome you, Rabbi Baker.
Thank you. It's an honor and incredibly emotional to be included in this ceremony, which means so much to our community. This commemoration comes at the end of what's been a devastating week. Just a week ago, many of us grieved together at the New England Holocaust Memorial for the victim of an anti-Semitic murder in Poway, just 6 months after Pittsburgh. And today, as Ambassador Beaucaire mentioned, we are mourning with our brothers and sisters in Israel who've lost, I think now the count is 4 people, in rocket attacks from Gaza. We stand with them as they face the terror of another day of sirens, as they rush to bomb shelters, not knowing whether their homes or their loved ones will be safe. Ambassador Beaucaire, we stand in solidarity with you, and we pray for their safety and for peace. In this broken world, at this incredibly important moment in history, hearing the stories of survivors is as urgent as ever. I'm here today representing Combined Jewish Philanthropies, nearing the end of my first year as president and CEO, and at CJP, together with our partners at JCRC and so many around this community, we strive to help our community fulfill its sacred obligation to preserve and transmit the memory of the Shoah to our next generation, to our Jewish community, and to the world. One of the ways we do this is through caring for the New England Holocaust Memorial, which was started by many of you, by our local Holocaust survivors, and is a crucial resource for students, tourists, and groups around the world who visit Boston. It has become a powerful fixture in the middle of downtown Boston, a place for survivors and their families to come together. For so many, there are no graves to visit, and this truly is a sacred space in which to remember. Yom HaShoah and ceremonies like this are so important because remembering, memory, has always been the calling card of the Jewish people. Zachor, the word for memory or to remember, appears almost 200 times in the Torah, and it's been the lifeblood of our people. We remember the Exodus, we remember the covenant, we remember the Sabbath. We remember individuals in our families and our communities whom we have lost. And sadly, we also remember the Holocaust, the darkest moment in human history. We're living in a modern world that tends to revere the new over the old, innovation over continuity, and the future over the past. But we know, as we have always known, that a strong, vibrant, thriving Jewish community is and always will be one that remembers. We remember in order to live out the value of kavod, respecting and honoring the lives and the memories of all those who perished in the Holocaust, as well as the dignity, the experiences, and the extraordinary resilience of those who survived. We must and we will tell and retell their stories. We are so blessed to have survivors and their families with us here today, and we will cherish every day we have with you. We remember because it's our ethical responsibility to learn from the past. Our values and our sense of moral obligation are shaped by our story and our experiences. This means never again will we let this happen to our people, and never again will we stand by and let any human being experience the horrors of hatred, violence, oppression, persecution. And we remember because it shapes who we are and connects us to something much larger than ourselves. We experience and we live history, but it's memory that creates our identities and the character of our community. It roots us deeply in our heritage, so we know where we come from and we have a foundation on which to stand. It connects us to future generations who will carry on our legacy, live out our values, and tell our story for generations to come. This is why we continue to remember, and this is why we are here today. Being with you gives me comfort, strength, and hope as we continue to remember, to tell, and to write our collective story together.
I'll tell you a story by raising my voice against racism. I'll try to defend people who are being bullied and respect the rights of all others. I'm proud of being a Jew and an Asian American.
I will tell your story by learning about the traditions and faith and people who came before me and gave their lives so Judaism today can flourish and remain an example of learning and growth for generations to come.
I will tell your story by standing up for people that can't stand up for themselves because I can.
I will tell your story.
I will tell your story telling others so it's not forgotten.
I will tell your story.
I will tell your story by raising my voice against hate because hatred has no place in this world.
I will tell your story by embracing my legacy as the grandson of a Holocaust survivor and by sharing my grandmother's story, which exemplifies how standing up for what is right can have a lifelong impact on future generations.
My name is Isaac Milley. The last video you just saw was my brother, Jacob. On behalf of our whole family, I'm so proud and honored to be here today to introduce two people who are so important and influential in my life. My grandmother, Janet Singer Applefield, who I call Baba, is one of the bravest, strongest, and most courageous people I know. She has worked hard to instill these qualities into her children and children's children. My mother, Deb Milley, shares these incredible qualities and continues to pass them on to my brother and to me. I am so fortunate to not only call them my grandmother and mother, but two of my best friends. My full name is Isaac Gustava Singer Milley. I wear this name with enormous pride and honor, and as you listen to my grandmother's story, you will learn the middle names that I carry are my namesake and have tremendous meaning to me and to my family. They represent my legacy, my history, and my story. and I will always proudly carry Gustava Singer with me, and someday we'll share the story of our past. My grandmother will always be remembered in my name and in my voice. It is my honor to introduce my grandmother, child survivor of the Holocaust, Janet Singer Applefield, who will speak first, and then followed by my mother, Deb Nilly.
Thank you so much for inviting me to tell my story of my survival, and I'm so honored to be here. Nazis murdered 11 million people. 6 million Jewish people were killed. 1.5 million Jewish children were murdered. Only 11% survived. I was one of those very lucky children who miraculously survived. I was born in Krakow, Poland, and I lived with my mother, father, baby sister in a little town 50 miles south of the city of Krakow. I lived there with a large extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles. By the way, my name was changed 3 different times during my childhood. My birth name was Gustava Singer. Also, my appearance had a lot to do with my survival because I looked like a typical Aryan child. I have wonderful, warm memories of those first 4 years of my life. September 1st, 1939, everything changed. My family was never the same. We had 3 different escapes. The first one was we headed eastward toward Russia. I remember that journey. I was just 4 years old, but I remember there were planes overhead shooting at us. We had to jump off the wagon and hide in a ditch. After we arrived in Russia, conditions were very difficult. There was shortage of food. There was shortage of work. My 2 uncles reported for work in front of a town hall. When they arrived there, they were taken to a nearby ravine. They were told to undress, and they were shot into the ravine. Another tragic thing happened. My baby sister, Sarenka, died. She contracted diphtheria, and she died. She was just 18 months old. After we were in Russia for approximately a year, we returned back to our town. Conditions deteriorated rapidly. All the Jewish people were forced to live in a ghetto. All the Jews had to wear armbands to identify themselves as Jews. Every day there were roundups of people. They were taken, some were taken and sent to slave labor camps. Others were taken to a local cemetery, made to dig their own graves, and they were shot into the graves. My parents decided we would try to escape. So one night we left and we went to the train station. We managed to take a train and we ended up in another town where my mother had relatives living. But when we arrived there, it was a very similar situation because the Nazis were so well organized. My parents again thought we could escape. So one night, we left in a horse and wagon. It was a very bright night. It was August 1942. We didn't get very far when suddenly in the distance, we saw Polish police approaching. We jumped off the wagon and we started to run. You might wonder, why would we be afraid of the Polish police? The reason for that was that Poland was a very anti-Semitic country, and often the Polish police collaborated and cooperated with the Nazis. We started to run, we tried to hide, but they caught us, they beat us up, and they made us return. At this point, my parents realized there was no place to hide, nowhere to run, nowhere to escape. They were desperately trying to find someone who'd be willing to take me and hide me. They were able to convince a woman, her name was Maria. Maria was a nanny to one of my cousins. They begged her to take me, and she agreed. So one day, my parents sat me down and explained I was going with Maria. I should be good, I should listen, and that we would be reunited soon. So I left with her. In the meantime, there was an order issued that the people from that town and all the surrounding towns had 3 days to report in an area outside of Krakow. My parents went to that place, and when they arrived, there were approximately 12,000 people congregated in a big meadow. It was August, very hot. There was no place to sleep. There was no food. And then there was a selection. A selection meant that there was a group of SS officers who made a decision who would live and who would die. Approximately 1,000 men were selected for slave labor. My father was one of those men. The rest of the people were put into 53 boxcars marked with the letter B. Between 120 and 150 people were put into each boxcar. It was so crowded that they couldn't lie down or sit. They had to stand for 5 days. They were sent to the concentration camp called Belzec. When they arrived, they were taken off the train and sent to the gas chamber. It took only 3 hours from the time they left the train to when they were killed. This camp existed only 6 months. In that period of time, 600,000 people were murdered. Only 2 people survived this camp. My mother was one of those victims. So was my grandmother, my aunts, my cousins, and other family members. When the Nazis learned how to kill more efficiently, they burned this camp to the ground and they opened Auschwitz. So my father was sent to the Krakow ghetto, and he worked on an assembly line in a factory making electrical cables. He told me he kept a little photograph of me in front of him, knowing that he gave me away and he had to find me when the war would be over. Now I left with Maria. Maria had an apartment in the city, and I remember so well being in that apartment, because she would go out in the evening and leave me alone. I was so scared because there was no electricity in the apartment, so I was in a pitch-black apartment. One day, there was a sharp knock on the door. Maria opened the door. There was an SS officer standing there. He said, "I have orders to search your apartment to see if you're hiding any Jews." He barged in, he looked under all the furniture, turned some of it over. He came up to me, held up my braid. He wanted to know who I was. She said I was her niece. She was taking care of me. He looked at me with his chilling blue eyes, and he turned around and left. And to this day, I remember what he looked like. He was blonde, blue eyes. He was wearing black leather boots that came up to his knees, and I could hear the clicking of his heels as he went down the steps. Now, my father knew that he had to make different arrangements for me because Maria said she couldn't keep me indefinitely. He was able to contact a cousin, my cousin Lala. She was living on falsified Polish papers. She had Polish identity. So one day, my care was transferred from Maria to my cousin. My cousin was a young woman, just 19. She was able to obtain a birth certificate of from a Catholic priest of a little Polish Catholic girl who died. And I took on her identity. I became her. Her name was Krystyna Antoszkiewicz. I'm just losing my place right now. Thank you. So I went to live with my cousin. We lived in another little town. She was very mean to me. She used to beat me with a fireplace poker. And when I cried for my mother, she said, "Your mother is dead. She's never coming back for you." One time she beat me so severely that all my fingernails turned black, they got infected, and all my nails fell off. There was a very nice woman who lived next door. Her name was Janina. I remember the time my fingers were so badly injured, she made bandages for my fingers. One day, my cousin said she was going to the city to meet her boyfriend. She had a Polish boyfriend that he used to come to visit her. She took me with her to the city, and when we arrived, she took me into a church, and she told me to sit and wait for her while she was going across the street to meet her boyfriend in a cafe. So I sat and I waited and waited, but she never returned. So finally, I walked out of the church. It was late afternoon. I crossed the street was cordoned off. I saw groups of people standing and talking, and I overheard them say that the Gestapo had come and they arrested everybody in that cafe. So here I was, 7 years old, crying, walking up and down the street. Suddenly a woman came up to me, quickly put me under her cape. She asked me, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" I explained that my cousin was in the cafe and now she was gone. I said, "Could you please take me to the bus? I was going to go back to my village." And she said, "No, you're too little." So she took me into the building where the cafe was, to the apartment of a woman by the name of Alicia Goem. Alicia asked me, "What happened? Who are you? Where are you from?" I had practiced the story to tell if I was ever captured, and I told her that I was the daughter of a Polish officer and both of my parents were killed in a bombing raid. She accepted my story, but said I couldn't stay in that apartment for 3 reasons. One was that there was an SS officer living in the building. Another reason was that Alicia's mother was very active in the Polish resistance, and in her apartment she ran a hospital. She had shortwave radios and ammunition. And the third reason was that when the Gestapo made an arrest, they always returned. So that evening, the oldest son took me and we walked for several miles, and we came to a farm that was owned and operated by the Catholic Church. And Alicia's brother-in-law was the administrator of that farm. So I remained on the farm. One day, I remember, we slaughtered a pig, but Polish people were forbidden to kill animals for their own consumption. That was strictly reserved for Germans. The kitchen was a big mess. They were cutting up the carcass, and suddenly there was a knock on the door. Someone came to tell us that Gestapo was on the way. Very quickly, we cleaned everything up and we waited, and the Gestapo came. And when they came, I was really scared because I was always afraid of uniforms. Whenever I saw uniforms, I was terrified. And I don't know what made me do this, but I said, "Give them vodka." So they were drinking, and then I started to sing and dance. So they were laughing and amused, and finally they left. We were liberated by the Russians, and I remember that because they were fighting all around the farm. And we had to use the outhouse when we needed the bathroom, so we were risking our lives. So when the war ended, my cousin's father found me, and he took me. But he didn't keep me very long. I left with him. He took me to the refugee center in Krakow. So you can imagine that the survivors coming out of hiding or out of camps were sick. They had no money, they had no clothing. So the refugee center was a place where they could get some help. So I went to live in the refugee center. I was 10 years old when the war ended. Every day there were lists posted on the wall with names of survivors. And along came a woman, her name was Lena. Lena came every day looking at the list, looking for her family. And she came across this room full of children and decided that she had to do something. So in time, she was able to open 2 orphanages. I remember so well the night we left for the orphanage because we had to leave in the middle of the night because there were men and women picketing in front of the refugee center carrying hateful slogans saying we all should have been murdered. So we had to leave in the middle of the night. We climbed into the trucks. They pulled tarpaulins over us so we would not be seen. One of the trucks was for children who had tuberculosis and other serious diseases because Polish hospitals refused to take Jewish children. So I went to live in an orphanage. Only the high school age children were sent to school. But every day they came back, they were beaten up by the Polish children. Lena was always afraid that our home would be attacked, so she obtained ammunition, and the older children were trained in use of ammunition. And one night, a Polish lady came. She came to tell us that our home was going to be attacked. So the children took their positions on the roof and on the balcony, and they waited, and they did come. And the men, Polish men on horseback, carrying fire torches and shooting, but the children were able to defend the home. One day, Lena went back to Krakow to pick up some provisions, and she overheard a man asking about his daughter. And she said to him, "Can you describe what your child looks like?" And when he did, she said, "I think I have your daughter." She came back to the orphanage and said, "I have wonderful news to tell you. Your father had survived." And I'll always remember the reunion with my dad because I was so afraid of him when I saw him. He looked like a skeleton. He was hugging and kissing me, and he was going to take me away. I really didn't even want to go because all of a sudden I had friends, and Lena was our mother. We called her mother. My father was very sick. He couldn't take me, but eventually he was able to take me. We moved back to our town. We lived with a few of my father's friends who survived above my grandparents' store, but we weren't safe there either. There were notes posted on our front door saying we would be murdered. So my father went to the police chief asking for protection, and the police chief said all he could do is to give my father a gun. So my father slept with a gun, and it became very clear that we had no future in Poland. So in time, he decided we had to leave. So he had two brothers, one brother in Palestine and one brother here. He asked me where I wanted to go, and I said, I want to go to America because I heard that money grew on trees. So in March of 1947, we came on a marine transport boat. It was very rough crossing because it was March, and I remember being enchanted with one food that I loved, red Jell-O. I thought it was magical food. And of course, the vending machines were very intriguing, you know, putting in a nickel and getting a Milky Way. So we settled in New Jersey, and my uncle took me to school to register me, and right there in the school office, he said, "What name do you want? You have to have an American name." So I thought for a minute, and I came up with the name Jeanette, because we had a French cousin who lived in Paris. She used to come in the summer to visit. She was beautiful and glamorous, and she had long red nails, and that did it. And I said Jeanette, and my uncle said, no, in English it's Janet. So that's how I became Janet. I had never been to school, but I knew how to read and write in Polish, but I didn't speak English, so I was put in a fifth grade in grammar school. So the other very serious issue we had was that we came on a 90-day visitor's visa. In 90 days, we had another visa to go to Venezuela. The only way we could remain in this country is if my father married an American citizen. So the family looked around and they found him a wife. So in that short period of time, I had a new stepmother, a new name, new language, new appearance, new friends, everything was new. And that's how I started my life in America. So I know when I'm no longer here, my legacy will continue because my children and grandchildren will continue to tell my story. Because I'm a witness of history and also the voice of those who have been silenced. I often think about the people who saved me. They were the true heroes. They didn't just save one life, they saved future generations. And it makes me realize that even the smallest acts of kindness have a ripple effect. So I urge each and every one of us to stand up to any kind of injustice, to be upstanders and not bystanders. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Deb Milley, and I'm honored to speak after my incredible mom. I am a wife and a mother, because these are the paths I have chosen to take. I was born the child of a Holocaust survivor. This is the path that was chosen for me. Each child of survivor wears this legacy differently and views this birthright through different lenses. For me, this legacy has landed on my shoulders with pride, with pain, with confusion, and a lifetime of questions, some spoken and some that live deep within my soul. Our lives are a constant ebb and flow of giving and taking, of generosity and selfishness, of heightened awareness and obliviousness, of good choices and bad. We have days where we are introspective and rejoice when we feel some internal growth or experience a light bulb moment, and days where we want no part of those inner relentless conversations that tug at us and try to infiltrate our busy lives. I have always known my mother's story of survival, although I don't remember when I first learned of it. I was born with it. I often wish I could thank Alicia Goam, the woman who saved my mother, and tell her that because of her, I have a mother who is an amazing woman, and that I have 2 beautiful children, and that someday they will have children, all because of her selflessness, compassion, and incredible bravery. In 2013, my younger brother John, who's sitting right there, and my mom traveled to Poland. As a part of their journey, John proposed they do a memorial service for my mom's mom, something we'd never done before. Each of us, my brothers and I, our respective spouses, and all of our children would write letters to our grandmother, and John would read them at this sweet, intimate ceremony. They stood in a shady spot by a flowering bush. I wrote to my grandmother as though she was sitting across the table from me. I wonder what I would have called you. Perhaps I would have called you Babcha had I had the chance. I would have loved that. Dear Babcha, how wonderful it would have been to know you, to see what you look like, to see if I look like you, and to see if my mom looks like you. How wonderful it would have been to see how you and your Jija might have been together. You were cheated out of so many things. I'm sure that you love being a mother to your precious Jija and Sarenka. I pray that on that fateful day when you said goodbye to your sweet Jija, you had confidence that you would soon be reunited. Even though I know that your heart must have been torn in two, I hope and pray you thought it was only a temporary separation. Otherwise, I do not know how you could have bared the pain. I often cry when I think of your torturous heartache. As a mother, when I think of that moment in your life, I cannot breathe. I am so sorry. Babcha, your sacrifice was our family's lifeline. I know that I could not have been so selfless. Because of you, I am here. And my brothers, David and Jonathan, are here. And because of you, my beautiful Jacob and Isaac are here. And David's children, Alexandre, Anna, and Ernesto, are here. And because of you, our family name will carry on. We have given purpose to your life and have tried to give some purpose to your death. I have made a commitment to share your story with others and make certain that people know the terrible fate you were made to endure. I help to make sure that people will never forget, and I tell about the gifts that your courage produced. If I could tell you one thing, Babcha, it would be how proud you would be of your beautiful blonde-haired, green-eyed girl. Her name is Janet, but I think she has always felt like Gustava. I even named my youngest son after her. His name is Azik Gustava Singer Millie, and he's sitting right there. My oldest son is named after your father, Jacob. You would have loved my boys, and I know they would have loved you. Jacob and Isaac call my mom Baba. It's almost like Babcha, and they love her so much. They've even taught her how to shoot hoops in the driveway and how to blow spitballs. My mother and I are best friends. She is an amazing and wonderful person. She is smart and pretty. She is playful and has a lovely, happy temperament. She loves donuts, rum raisin ice cream, and Dr. Phil. She loves art and she loves the beach. Most importantly, she is the best grandmother to Jacob and Isaac, and a wonderful mother-in-law, and an amazing mother and friend to me. I adore her. I know you would be very proud of her. Thank you for giving her to me. I live every single day with gratitude. We will never forget the sacrifice you made for us. I love you and will always honor your memory. You are my hero. I hope we can someday meet. Kisses, Deb. While my belly has always housed a somewhat irrational but understandable fear of the unthinkable, lately our world news, our social media feeds, and our very own communities are dotted with frighteningly frequent random acts of hatred, bigotry, xenophobia, and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and anti-Semitism. I go to movie theaters, I go to airports, I go to synagogues, and recently I went to the Islamic Center of New England for a vigil after the horrific New Zealand attacks. Each time, I now walk in and plan an immediate escape strategy, just in case. This is my normal. My imagination knows no peace. I am often tortured by the image of my grandmother's last kiss on her Jija's innocent soft cheek. I am now equally tortured by the thought of the day that I experience my mom's last kiss on my cheek. How will I live? How will I breathe? I want to cry out, just as my mom likely cried to you over 75 years ago. Mommy, don't leave me. Again, as children of survivors, we all carry this enormous legacy in our own way and navigate this title in whatever way we need to so that we can manage, so that we can heal, and most importantly, so that we can live fruitful, meaningful lives. Some need to hide, some need to shout, some need to forget, and some are not sure what to do with this history that, like it or not, we cannot shed. My lens has always been clouded and simultaneously blessed. When I was a little girl, I unconsciously promised myself that I would protect this little girl, my mother, for as long as I live. While I have honored this commitment, it has carried consequences. Was it a burden that shaped my life, or a blessing that enriched my life? I now know it was both. My mother is still my closest friend on this planet Earth, and while I will be devastatingly sad when my mother is no longer laughing by my side in the first dressing room on the left in Marshall's, her story and her legacy will live on through me, through my brothers, and through our children. She will always be a part of the air that I breathe. So if you hear only the sadness in my mom's story, then you are missing one of the most important reasons she speaks to over 5,000 people each year. Of course, it's important that you hear firsthand the horrors of the Holocaust, but it is equally important that you hear of the goodness and the bravery that it took to save my mother's life, and even more importantly, how you can take the lessons of my mom's incredible story and use it as a reminder to make good choices in your life. Today, we honor all who lived, all who died, and all those who refused to be indifferent. We, as your descendants, will carry your stories with us as a rich and valuable inheritance. Please take time every single day to demonstrate acts of compassion, fairness, and love. And please spread kindness. It's infectious. Thank you.
We are gifts, and we are blessings. We are His history in song. We are hope and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Vador, nagid god lecha. Vador, we protect this chain from generation to generation. Vador, these lips will praise your name.
Looking back on the journey that we carried in our hearts, from the shadow of the mountain to the waters that would part. We are blessed and we are holy. We are children of your way, and the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. The door, nagid gad lecha. The door, we protect this chain from generation to generation. The door, these lips will praise your name.
Will praise your name.
Good afternoon. I'm Jack Arbeiter, and today I have the honor of presenting the awards for the 13th annual Israel Arbeiter Holocaust Essay Contest. The contest was created in honor of my father, Izzy Arbeiter, as a vehicle for students to learn about the Holocaust and commit to the critical transmission of lessons learned. You just saw a video clip that highlights the kind of impact my father has had. 13 years and literally thousands of students and compelling essays are testimony to that impact. This year's essay prompt invited students in grades 6 through 12 to write a 400 to 800 word essay on the concept of what it means to be a witness. The Anti-Defamation League reports a 57% increase in incidents of hatred such as anti-Semitism, racism, and prejudice over the last 2 years. There is no greater example of the atrocities that can come from such acts than the Holocaust. We challenge our young people to remember, to take this time as an opportunity to reflect on the power of individuals, groups, and nations, not just in an historical context, but in the very present moment. We challenge our young people to accept the responsibilities of telling the story of being the next generation, of being a witness. This year we received over 200 essays from dozens of area schools, each composed with depth, meaning, and true contemplation on this challenging subject. Their reflections lend promise to the next generation's commitment never to forget. All of our winners will receive a trip to the U.S. Holocaust Museum in November and an educational scholarship. We gratefully acknowledge our friends and donors who sustain the essay contest and enable young voices to be heard as they strive to cultivate a better world. Please join me in welcoming this year's Israel Arbeiter Holocaust Essay Contest winners as I invite them each to join me on stage. For the lower division, in third place, Kendall Colleran, 8th grade, Concord Middle School, Jen Frizzell, teacher. Congratulations. Stand over here and wait for me. In second place, Remington Urbano, 8th grade, Hingham Middle School, Heidi Sullivan, teacher. Just wait over here for a second. And our first place winner, Ellie Grahan, 8th grade, Concord Middle School, Jen Frizzell, teacher. Just wait over here with everybody. In the upper division, in third place, Tori Kellogg, 11th grade, Stoughton High School. Laurie Setterquist, teacher. Wait a minute. In second place, Cameron Smith, 11th grade, Stoughton High School, Laurie Setterquist, teacher. And our first place winner, Natalia Shore, 12th grade, Reading Memorial High School, Dr. Jeffrey Ryan, teacher. Get over there with everybody. Natalia's powerful essay is in your program. Congratulations to this year's essay winners, and thank you to all the educators who are ensuring that our students are given the opportunities to thoughtfully reflect, bear witness, and take on the responsibilities of the next generation.
I will tell your story through my children, ensuring that the Jewish people's struggle was not in vain. I will tell your story by embracing Judaism as a family and ensuring my kids grow up proud and taught to fight for what they believe in, L'Dor Vador.
Our program will conclude here with the recitation of the Kaddish. Although there is no formal program, you are all welcome to proceed to the New England Holocaust Memorial for your own private reflections. Upon conclusion, please wait for the survivors to exit, followed by the dais participants. Guests will then be dismissed row by row by the ushers. Now I ask Rabbi Moshe Waldox to lead us in the Al Malai Rachamim.
If you're able to rise, the El Malai Rachamim and the Kaddish are in your booklet. Just a word about the first words which have bothered me consistently, which is, "O God, full of compassion." May not have bothered you, but it's bothered me. But I know it's a tradition to realize that the compassion that we receive was not the compassion perhaps of a deus ex machina, some magic God who came in at the third act and saved the day, but it was the God who went into the suffering with those who suffered. My mother had a little Gotenu, a little God, when she went into the labor camp. So the compassion we look for is the compassion for us today, that we have the capacity to be there for each other, the capacity to identify each and every one of us as an image of God. And that compassion is what we have passed on from generation to generation and will continue to do today. So exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the souls of all of our brethren, men, women, and children of the house of Israel, who were slaughtered, burned, choked, and buried alive. May their memory endure, inspiring truth and loyalty in our lives. And may their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life. And let us say, Amen. Ele morerachamim, shochei mameromim, hamitzei menuchonechoino, hoitachas kan veyashechino, במעלויס קדושים וטהורים כזוהר רקיע מעשירים את נשמוס כל אחינו בני ישראל אנושים נושים וטף שנהרגו ושנטבחו ושנשרפו ושנחנקו בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם. אנו ברחמים אז תראים בסייסק כנופךו ליהלומים וצרור בצרור החיים es nishmoisehem Adonai hu nachalasom v'nomar. The Mourner's Kaddish is found in the booklet, I believe 2 or 3 pages from the end. Please join me. יתגדל ויתקדש שם רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו, יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומי עולמיו, יסברך וישתבח ויספואר ויסרומם ויסנשא, ויסדר ויסעלה ויסעלול שמי דקודשו, Leilo min kol birchoso v'shiroso, tush bechoso v'nechemoso, damiron bi'alma v'yimru, Yehi Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'yimru, Amen. Thank you all for being with us. We trust we'll see you on wonderful occasions throughout the year and certainly next year here as well.